Right, and we are live, the inaugural multi-stream of the entrepreneurial web.
There you go, man.
We have taken it off of talkradio.nyc, talking alternative broadcasting, to try something different. It's a new year, mix things up. It was great though. Like, there's a number of things I want to talk about today. I had my show on that network for 2.5 years. And there are pros and cons to using a network, I would say. Before we go any further, let me introduce Nick. He's just Nick. That's your screen name is just Nick. We're not going to say anything else about Nick.
Hey, man, that's okay. I haven't been active much on LinkedIn recently. I've been focusing more on my podcast. So I haven't been live streaming as much. And it's kind of like anything, like that you put your focus to, that's where your energy goes.
Yeah.
And I kind of neglected it for probably about 1.5 years. And I'm trying to put more focus into it.
Into the podcast.
Yeah, make it more polished product. So I had to, reel in a bit on everything that I was doing on social. And I mean, you know how hard and difficult it is when you're in the grind, man. Sometimes you get distracted and you go and it can be difficult to keep it going.
Well, that's something I want to circle back to, because I've had some breakthroughs with that lately too, because it is a lot of fucking work. This is a lot of work. Why don't you go ahead? Ryan's just pulling up now. Let's bring him in. Yes, welcome, my friend. See, he's got a last name, Ryan Gerardi.
Oh, you want me to change my name? I can put my last name.
I'm just messing with you, man. All right, so the triumvirate is here. Ryan Gerardi, Nick Lozano, Jeremiah Fox.
Hey, Nick.
For the inaugural multi-stream of the entrepreneurial web. So I was just going to ask Nick to give a little background on his podcast. He was just talking about how he was going really hard on social and kind of neglected the podcast. For everybody listening, these two are experienced veterans of multi-streaming, which is why I wanted them here to hold my hand through the dark wilderness. Because man, it could easily come unraveled. So at least if I blow it out, they can offer tips to get us back on track. So go ahead, Nick. Talk about your podcast a little bit and why you chose the multi-stream route.
Yeah, so everyone who doesn't know me, I'm Nick Lozano, like Jeremiah said, and I do run a podcast. It's called Lead.exe. It's leadership based from a technology leader's perspective. And that's kind of where I got into the social media world. I initially hopped on because, just like anything else, you got to promote it, right? You just can't put it out and expect droves of people to come. It doesn't happen. And that was my interest way really into social media and being on LinkedIn in general. And then from there, the pandemic kind of happened, and I was looking for more ways to reach more people, and that's where I hopped into live streaming. Right, it's kind of like podcasting. A lot of the stuff's similar. I had the audio set up. I had a camera and everything already. So I was like, hey, why not dive into this thing? And I got access to LinkedIn Live pretty early when it was still like an application process, and you had to basically write a novel to get them to approve you.
Right, I remember that, and I was like, they're not going to give this to me. I think I had like 150 followers at the time. I had just joined LinkedIn, and I had the show already. Same thing. I got hot on social just for the show. And I'm like, they're not going to give this. So I abandoned it until just recently.
Yeah, and so that's where I came from in a nutshell, really, and that's where I wound up where I am today. I've pulled back a little bit on the multi-streaming in about the past 6 months because I need to put more focus on my podcast in general, on the production side and promotion side. So I'm trying to angle my focus more to that, get the wheels up and running in a more systemized approach, and then I'll kind of hop back on the live streaming wagon here soon, probably in a couple months.
And your choice to do multi-stream versus just like, hey, I'm on LinkedIn Live. You were going to LinkedIn Live, Twitch, and somewhere else?
And YouTube.
Yep. And YouTube. So the decision to do that as opposed to just like one targeted audience.
You know how that really happened? Okay, so I initially got into multi-streaming because I was only streaming to LinkedIn, and I was using OBS, which is open broadcast software, if people aren't familiar with that. And I was sending my custom feed to LinkedIn, and it just looked like hot garbage. Like it would like glitch, and it wouldn't play right, and the frame rate was all messed up. So then I just started streaming to other platforms, and then eventually picked up steam on Twitch, where I became an affiliate on there. I got into some of the Twitch stuff alone, but Going forward, my focus probably won't be Twitch because you have to stream there a ton, constantly
Right.
to kind of stay up top of mind of people. But that's how I kind of wound up in multi-streaming, is by accident, and by LinkedIn live streaming not being the greatest in the beginning. It's gotten a lot better than it was, about 18 months ago.
Cool. And Ryan, I would like you to kind of address the same thing. Talk about your multiple shows and your decision to multi-stream as opposed to just I'm doing it on this one platform and that's it.
Well, to be accurate, I actually only live stream to YouTube. I don't multi-stream to other destinations.
Okay.
And the reason I ended up doing YouTube I think it started about 3 years ago, is I had launched a show and I was doing it on Facebook. Mm-hmm. And we were doing it for about a year and a half. And I just was finding the streaming platform on Facebook, it was ganky. Like I just couldn't get a good stream experience out of it. There was too many technical nuances to it. And one day I had a show and we were about to go live and I couldn't even get it to go live. So I quick went to YouTube and got my codec string working and got the show live, and I never looked back. YouTube has just always been an ideal, streaming platform for me. I haven't tried Twitch, but I hear great things about it. What I would throw out to you guys is why live stream? Because
very good question.
The reality is live streaming it's awkward. It is difficult. And what I mean by awkward, it's awkward for not just, the people watching, but also us, like the people on the show. Most people walk away from a live stream like, oh, that was weird, or that was hard, or that wasn't what I thought it would be. They think they're going to watch a polished professional, studio, TV program. So my question, and I could answer, but yeah, I think we all have to say, why bother live streaming? Like, what's the point? And if you can't define that, then I think that's one thing you should do, is define it.
Yeah, and maybe pre-record if you can. I mean, for me personally, just growing up as a performer, I've got 2 music degrees. I played music since I was live, since I was like 12 years old. And growing up in the service industry, that's a performance when you're bartending and cooking in open air kitchens. Everybody's watching you. And I just love that live organic component of it. And people have been attracted to that. That's been like the foundation of many, many great relationships over the years. So for me, it's just a continuation of that. And when it was offered, like, you can pre-record, and I was like, why would I do that? I want the awkwardness. I want the brutal truth. More than anything, I love, honesty and consistency. And it's like jujitsu, you can't lie on the mats. What was that? How long did that take? It was 8 minutes. That was good. I got the shirt on, but yeah, it was brewing. It was brewing in there. Jiu-jitsu is very honest and you can't hide, and I think live streaming is the same way. You can sniff some bullshit in somebody real quick. And I want personally to be very honest and accountable. And I want to bring guests on. Like, I feel like that's the value proposition of the show, is that bringing on people that are honest and accountable, that will help you in some way, not selling some bullshit, like actually offering like cold hard facts and data driven analysis and offering some sort of assistance to anybody that's watching.
Well, I find what I like about live streaming is kind of what you were getting at, because it's raw and it's live. There's no pause, there's no back button. So I do think you get the best of people.
Yeah,
I think you get everyone just innately puts on their best. It's their spontaneous self, and that's the best we can be. So for me, that's what I like about it. It's not about reaching audience and whatnot. I don't use live stream as a means to an end to reach more people. In theory, it could, but like, I have my live streams automatically unlisted after it ends. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't mean you can't access it. Right. It just means it's not available unless you have the link. And that creates a little bit of scarcity for it.
A little exclusivity.
Just a little bit.
What about yourself, Nick? What's your thoughts on that live stream? Because you've done a lot of live streaming.
Yeah, I would agree with what Ryan said. Like it's difficult in the beginning, right? You pull up to live stream and it's awkward, and especially if you're used to doing stuff pre-recorded, like podcasting, where you can take the ums and the ahs out, and you can take, like your camera falling off your PC or something like that. But in real time, that stuff happens, and I feel like that makes a connection with the audience, to people who do watch. And like Ryan said, it's not about like getting the tens of thousands of people to watch. It's engaging with the people who actually do come to enjoy your content, and whether it's like one person or 10. And I've made great connections to people just streaming on, LinkedIn and Twitch, just by them seeing them pop up all the time. And they come on a stream, you see them in a comment, and you talk to them. And to your point, Jeremiah, it's more about you can't fake it, right? When you're live, like you can only do so much before your true personality comes out and people get to see who you truly are, because it's real time. You can't edit anything out.
Well, then the true personality comes out when the camera falls, like when all the bad shit starts to happen. That's when you get to see like who's a paper tiger and who's solid. It's interesting what you said, Ryan, about removing the stream or hiding it, whatever, from the platform.
Unlisting it, yeah.
Yeah, unlisting it, because honestly, like, I would say, based off of my data analysis of all of my streams, most of the views come from the playback, not the live. My brother and I do a live stream on Instagram every Sunday, and it's the same way. Sometimes we get no viewers in a 45-minute show while we're live, but then it archives to Instagram, and then we also post it to Facebook, just as a post, as a social post, and there we'll get we could get hundreds of views. After the fact.
So I'll share a technique that I do religiously. So I make these short videos, and I know you do too. So I'll make 2 to 3, sometimes up to 5 short videos from a single show, from a single live stream. I publish those to YouTube. I insert a card at the end that puts that show at the end,
right,
and lets people get to it. And so I think that works, because my view counts on those live shows do go up. Every time I'm looking, I see higher numbers. They're always getting a few more. Yeah. And I know it's not from YouTube pushing it to people. It's from people actually watching my content and then seeing the prompts and the call to action. And that's not the only way they can get to those, but that is one way that they can get to them.
And how long or short are those? Is the micro content where you're putting the toggle at the end?
Yeah,
show.
I do 30, 60, 90 seconds. Depending on the clip. And then on the high end, I'll do 2 to 3 minutes.
Right.
And once I get over that 2-minute mark, it better be damn good.
Right. It's gotta be exciting.
Yeah, it's gotta be good. So yeah, keep it real short. And it's the micro content. That is why I live stream, to record the rawness that you get like this. But I'm really in it. It's just a recording session to make the micro content. That's it. Obviously, the networking benefits of being here is awesome, right? For the people that are here. But it's like think of like a corporate webinar. Hey, sign up for our webinar. Well, I can't make it. It's okay. If you sign up, you'll get a recording, because everybody goes back and watches recordings of sterile corporate webinars. Like,
it's my favorite thing to do.
Right.
Well, it's like the philosophy in recording studios, like for music, even when the band's warming up, like just hit record, because you never know, like they're jamming, they're like nailing it on the warm up, and they're like, okay, now let's record, and it's gone. Like that magic is gone. And like, fuck, if we just would have. And so I feel like this is the same. It's an extension of that. I would say for me, well, here's 2 things. So I had a sports broadcaster, sports podcast host on a few weeks ago. His name's Bo Templin. He's a young dude. He's a sports podcast host and writer for 1:37 p.m., which is one of Gary Vaynerchuk's side projects and media outlets. And I asked him, he just like sent them a DM. He was doing it on his own just for fun, and like sent them a DM like, hey, I think this would be a good fit for your company. And they were like, yeah, let's do it. And I asked him like, why do that versus just continue on your own? And his basic response was the resources, like the audience. First, they give you just like a ton of reach because they have that built in, and just a number of other resources and access to get to high level guests that would take it more seriously. Like, hey, I'm from this media company that has affiliations with like some major things. So it offered him audience and guests right from jump. And I would say the same is true for me when talkradio.nyc offered me a spot because I had nothing. I was starting from nothing. I was not active on social media at the time. I had a personal Facebook and Instagram account that I never posted to, and that was kind of it. So I had no audience. I had access to guests just because I'm in New York City and I'm surrounded by a bunch of crazy people that I knew would have no problem coming on. But the first thing was audience, and that was very valuable. I mean, I got pretty good. It's funny. I got stats on the audio for the most part. I mean, I could see the Facebook live replays. So the show the live audio would go to the internet broadcast, talkradio.nyc, and then the live video would go to the station's Facebook page. And so I got to see how many views. Even I could go back 2 weeks later and be like, okay, I got like 5 more views just because it was archived on their page. And I would get stats every month about unique listeners, but it didn't tell me anything else about the listener, like how long they were tuned in for, where they were coming from. But per show, and it was sizable. It was like, I think I was averaging like 500 unique listeners per show. That's
good.
That's nothing. Those are, you can't buy that like you can buy Instagram followers, So that was cool. But just like, the further I go into business and become data driven, it spilled over into the show as well, because it is an investment. And then it was also studio fees associated with all that, which were not, small. They weren't huge, especially when you compare it to like music recording studios. It was a deal as far as that goes. I was like, that's it? Okay, great. Yeah, here you go. But definitely there was a point where I wanted more data based on interactions. And it wasn't interactive, especially the audio version. People couldn't leave comments. People couldn't ask questions. They could call in, but like, how many people do that anymore? It's not the 80s.
Unless you're on the real radio.
I was like, Ryan and I might remember that. I don't think you're a little younger. You might not remember.
No, I remember that. Yeah.
People used to call in on talk radio, NPR. Yeah, it doesn't really happen anymore. And so I like the interactive aspect of the social lives, and then definitely built up decent audiences and connections through LinkedIn, through Twitter, through Facebook. I have some YouTube subscribers, not that many, but that was like my main goal now for shifting to that, is because I feel like I could probably hit the same amount of numbers in terms of reach per show, but now there is this opportunity for interaction. And I think the video just captures a little bit more. So when you're just scrolling, you're like, oh, he's live again. And I see him this time, versus I have to physically go to a website and actively select this individual show to get, and it's just more barriers, it's more friction, where you just open LinkedIn, it's Thursday at 11:20, and you're just like, boom, oh, that dude, he's there again. Look, oh, I've seen Nick's post before. I like his, and the potential, I think, for more engagement and a possibility for a comment. So if you're listening, drop a comment, ask a question. These guys are full of knowledge.
So let me challenge you on that, because what you're saying is the friction of getting someone to go out of their way to go to your house to watch you versus conveniently just showing up on their feed, right? Well, I mean, there are certain programs, podcasts or shows that I make a point to go and consume on a regular basis. In fact, one of them is annoying because it's an audio podcast, but it's through a web browser. So unlike listening to a podcast where when you get out of the car or turn it off, it stops, and then it starts when you get back in the car and just picks up where you left off. Like this is through a web browser because it's premium, it's paid for, and it's not on a regular podcast. So there's friction and annoyance there, but I still want the content, and I go and get it. And I would put forth that in this day and age, you really have to separate. You have corporate and mainstream for-profit media, and then you have what I don't know what I'd call this media, but it's B2B, it's networking, it's business development, and there's a video live component to it. So you have to separate those two classes and what they are, because there is a lot of value in the original idea of Facebook live streaming, which would be like Periscope was. The original idea was you get on your phone, you talk to your followers or your friends, and it's real. It's like, hey, Jeremiah, great to see you. Nick, great to see you. And like they can't talk, but you can acknowledge them. And that, I mean, does that feed our narcissism? Yeah, I think in a way people like when I'm going to tune in because Jeremiah's going to say my name. And I'm going to hit that like button. He's going to give me a shout out, and people like that. And so it's kind of a self-perpetuating, feed, and it works, and that's fine for what it is. But that's not a show or a professional grade piece of entertainment or whatnot. It's a whole different ballgame. And I think when you strive to get there, suddenly live streaming is like, well, live streaming isn't necessarily what's just going to make everything great and bring all these people. You got to come to the table with substance, and it's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that make up, I think, the attraction of what you do. So I would put forth a little friction's okay.
Yeah.
It's not gonna work if you have no substance. But if you have substance and people want your content, a little bit of friction is not bad in today's day and age. A little bit of scarcity isn't bad either.
Yeah, no, and there's always some, and I appreciate that challenge, and steps have already been taken in that direction. So I'm building. It's almost done, like a landing page for the show itself, which will just redirect you to the archive platforms. The problem that arose with me is that I spent a lot of time marketing the station's website.
Yeah.
And I got no direct feedback.
No traffic.
I got no data on like who was going there because of me, because I was posting tune in live at talkradio.nyc, where if I connect it to my landing page, it's only my data. It's like, okay, and I can see where it's coming from. And that will link out to, I still have, the show still archives in audio format to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, a number of places right now, but I'm going to consolidate it. Strangely enough, I just got stats, just downloads, not plays, and I need to dig a little deeper to figure out the plays, but exponentially, Apple Podcasts is the most utilized place for the audio version of my podcast. Which is not the major player in terms of podcast listening. It's Spotify. Apple Podcasts is very strong second, but that's just where my biggest
syndicate.
So having that is very informative too, and I think it makes sense because you got people like Rogan on Spotify who's probably consuming the majority of podcast listening on that platform, and they're probably not bumping out anybody else. They're probably like, oh, if you like Joe Rogan, you should check out Jeremiah. Yeah, it's not.
No, right.
Apple Podcasts now, there's been a little vacuum there because he was on there, and now he's not. I think the older shows are still there, but his newer shows aren't. So they're probably actively, like at least a little bit promoting anybody in that format. And not for nothing, we do talk about combat sports a lot. Ryan, I know you have to go soon. Is there anything else? Well, I have one more question for you, actually. So you only stream to YouTube, but you use you use StreamYard, which is one of the most popular platforms for streaming and multi-streaming. Why choose that platform versus inherently just streaming directly from YouTube?
A lot of it has to do with first impression. So like I tried to use OBS. I was using Zoom when I had first started my current show that I'm going to bump
all did
to.
that. I've been on Zoom for a year and a half, and I was like,
And to give you a little backstory, I started using Zoom back in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
And it was because it streamed to Facebook
Yeah.
and YouTube, but I was doing Facebook at the time.
Yeah.
Whereas GoToMeeting didn't do that. So this was before the pandemic, before Zoom blew up. I started using Zoom because it could stream. And even though 2017 was only a few years ago, at the time, very few people were doing streaming in business that way. There were people getting onto like the native Facebook app with their phone and streaming, but no many people were really sitting down doing like a show and streaming it like that. So that's why. So I started on Zoom. But when I wanted to,
I was gonna say Facebook's functionality didn't allow for you to like bring guests on, right?
no, Zoom. That's why I needed Zoom, so I could have the guests and I was just sending it to. So that's exactly why.
And it still doesn't, right? You still can't invite guests on Facebook Live.
I think I haven't been on Facebook in 2 years, but last I was, you could invite people onto your live stream, and sometimes it worked, and sometimes it didn't.
Sounds like typical Facebook.
And that's live streaming, folks. Sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't.
But to answer your question about why StreamYard, so I wanted to take my product, my show, to a higher level. I wanted to separate and differentiate. And so I knew I needed show elements. So I started toying with OBS, and I just couldn't get Zoom and OBS to work. And after hours and hours and hours of trying, you're like, I can't keep trying, and I couldn't get it to work. And so I started asking around people that I know and trust. And one person that I really admire, actually, you met Mike Phillips when you were on the show.
Oh yeah.
And he suggested StreamYard. I got in there, I played with it, and I think within 30 minutes, I'm like, that's all I need. Like, it just worked. It was easy and it worked, and so I just went with it.
All right, StreamYard, put that check in the mail. Let's get that
now, just for the record, Hopin. Have you guys heard of Hopin?
No.
You need to look up Hopin. They're the fastest growing. You're nodding yes, Nick.
Yeah, I'm familiar with it. Yep.
Yeah, they're like the fastest growing SaaS company right now in the country. And they offer a live streaming suite platform and that allows for, hybrid and in-person integrations. Well, they just bought StreamYard. And so now StreamYard's getting a whole nother layer built around it. And StreamYard's going to be just basically one streaming tool. But one thing they're both focused on is having a watch page that's not out on Facebook and on YouTube. It's on your platform, if you will. Eventbrite, I haven't toyed with this yet, but I started using Eventbrite, which you're familiar with, for people to book themselves on our shows. Well, Eventbrite now offers a watch page that I haven't experimented with, but I'm curious about that. So I see that, and I do see the importance. Instead of going out and getting on social media because everyone's there, yes, you're getting the analytics, which you weren't getting with your previous network. You are getting the analytics, but don't fool yourself. You're not getting the audience.
Yeah,
you're just you're not.
Well, it's definitely not growing the audience. It's re-engaging current audience.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is you still don't. It's not your audience that you can't really do much with it. Is my point.
Yeah, it's printed land, right? What you're saying, right? So find them on social media, but move them to assets that you own, right? So that you can maintain the audience yourself, right? Is that the point?
I do, absolutely. I believe it's about your database, right? I use MailChimp and Pipedrive, and it's very important for me to get you in my database, and that's why I say, hey, if you want to, access to my shows, just sign up. There's no cost for it, but just sign up. You can subscribe to YouTube. And you'll get notified when we go live, and you'll have the link if you ever want to watch it. But that's all you're going to get. Like, if you want more, just come sign up, and now I can actually build a relationship with you. And the show is just a means to it's just a tool to nurture that relationship.
That's great. That's really fantastic. See, like, I knew taking the step, I didn't know where it was going to lead, but I was just like, we have to just take this step. It was like there, and we'll digress on that more after you're off, but you can come back and listen to it.
I got some good ideas for you. They're good because I thought of them. but I've got some good ideas for you that I look forward to sharing. But
Yeah.
I do have to bump. So, hey, Nick, good to meet you.
Ryan, nice to meet you.
We should connect. Jeremiah, congrats on moving up into the world. It's a big step.
It is. I feel like I got my big boy pants on today.
Yeah. I really don't recommend being the producer and the host. I'm tired of it. When I finish my shows, I'm just mentally drained.
Yeah.
And here's something interesting. When you're the host, producer, you're actually so distracted, you're not fully engaged. Like right now, I'm fully engaged with the conversation because I don't have to worry about anything but the conversation. When you're also the producer, you're split.
Yeah.
And that actually is a disservice. I mean, it's not like a sin, but it's, if you can separate those two, that's good.
Yeah, I intend to. I've also, just my nature, it's just like me at the restaurant. I have to know how to do everything in there. I have to know how to do everything just in case it's just me one day, like they say this show must go on, and I have to have at least a basic understanding of the bells and whistles. And I did want to compliment you, and I mentioned this before, on the way that you run your show, because it's you add all these really great elements too that I think you can only get through a third party service like StreamYard or Restream.
Yeah.
Where as you're talking, Ryan is pulling up your LinkedIn profile, pulling up stats, pulling up all kinds of different things that really it just makes the experience more, much more valuable than just like, hey, it's two guys, shooting shit with each other.
It is, and unfortunately, like I said, if you're doing both, it's
distracting.
It can be a little bit ganky. I mean, heck, when you were on my show in November, my video was frozen half the time, and I never even knew it till I went back to watch it. I'm like,
it's probably better that you
came out.
Yeah,
it's live stream, right? Happens.
Yeah,
it's
probably better. I didn't know.
I did a little test run with the external camera, and it was just a mess, So today I'm just using the camera on the computer, and we'll get that fleshed out in the future. But it's probably better you didn't know, because then that like bead of sweat starts to run down your head, and there's nothing you can do, and you're just
what's
like,
going on?
Yeah.
And I'm a total perfectionist. I like everything's got to be perfect for me.
Oh, yeah. Cool. I've done something similar. I like when I first started messing with OBS, Jeremiah, and I had a guest on, and I forgot to turn my own camera on in OBS. So I was literally just a talking voice talking to somebody who was on camera because I never changed the scene. So I've been there and done that.
Cool, Ryan. Well, thanks again for hopping on, man. I will talk to you very soon. And thanks again for all your help and advice along the way, man. It's been invaluable.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me up here. Good to meet you, Nick. And Jeremiah, I'll talk to you in a little bit.
All right.
See you guys.
Man. So the other thing that I like about this is that there's no commercials anymore. I mean, at first I was like, all right, I don't love the commercials for the radio station. And then there was a point where I was like, I really like it because it's a break and we get to do these one little things. But then as the show went on and I got more comfortable as a host, it became more of like an annoyance, because somebody would be in like a really good, you couldn't let the show just like
you've got to stop them. And
And
I felt that before the first time I was on your show. I was like, oh man, I had to think to myself, I was like, I can be long-winded sometimes.
Yeah.
I've got to realize that like I got to watch the clock and what I'm saying.
Yeah.
As opposed to this where it's, it's just free flowing. If you want it to be an hour, it's an hour. If you want it to be 3 hours, it's 3 hours,
Yeah. We're not doing 3 hours today, but
yeah, no.
That's the other day we could, because I would get really going with guys. And there was an end too, we had to end at like 12:57. And my guy is like really in the zone. I'm like, fuck, I don't want this to stop. And the producer's sending me like these messages like 3 minutes, you're overtime, and I'm like, okay, cut it off. And I've had a couple, man, they were not taking the cues. It was just like, they were just like, I'm like, okay, oh boy. Yeah. So now, to Ryan's point, there's always like these things that you're negotiating, but it is nice to like reduce certain ones just to create a more even flow where you can enjoy yourself. I feel like the most important thing is like making the guests feel comfortable. The reason I chose you two is because you guys are hosts and you're nothing's gonna rock you, but like you bring on people and it's their first time and they're like a deer in headlights, and you got to really make them feel comfortable. And then you have to do the same for yourself. You have to be like, all right, this is I want to be able to.
So there's one of these things. So like to Ryan's point, when I started using OBS, Restream didn't have this studio version. It was just like you had to use OBS, and it was more geared towards the people who stream on Twitch and like YouTube and stream gaming. So they have all these custom setups. Like when you were on my show, you were in Zoom, but it was a full custom setup that everybody saw on the other side with transitions and emojis flying across the scene. This product that they had wasn't there, and there was StreamYard. And when the pandemic hit, they're just like, hey, we need to compete in this market because people are live streaming. There needs to be an easier product where you can just put a graphic in there and run a video and put an ad on the show. Like, I'm sure for you, it's your first time doing it, producing it, but once you kind of get the ins and outs, you're like, oh, okay, I just put that person on the show here, and then they're live. You can click on that comment and it shows up and it bounces in and bounces out. They've made it just so simple to live stream. Between whether you pick StreamYard or Restream, either one's good. But I have heard Restream themselves say that they want this Restream Studio product to fully replace OBS where you don't need it. Yeah. So they're working on things where like you can put multicam in there, that you can do green screens, that you can pre-roll recorded videos. They want this to be a full baked-in solution where anybody can just kind of pop in and use whatever they want.
I feel like when I was looking at the product descriptions, the most premium version offered a multicam option, that's crazy. That's like, then you're getting up there, I'm not ready for that yet, but I'm excited to like really poke around. I didn't have much time. This was definitely like a Hail Mary.
So one of the cool things I'll tell you too about Restream, depending on which product so like for people who are watching this, if you're watching this now or on the replay, the big difference between the two is Restream has a lot more features and it's geared more towards like the professional streamer. So it's a bit more expensive. And then StreamYard's kind of like more of a personal level thing, I would think, where, like you're only gonna stream for yourself. You don't care about analytics. But one of the great things about Restream is when you stream to YouTube or Twitch, you can actually see the stats of comments, who the top commenter was, when people pop on and pop off, compiled statistics between different platforms. Unfortunately, LinkedIn doesn't feed that to Restream, but if you're on those other two platforms, you get to see all that stuff as well too. And then it saves your recordings and you can pull them down, make your micro content later. There's all kinds of cool stuff that both of them are kind of doing. And we've seen StreamYard, since Hopin bought them, like they're pushing money into it. So it's a great time to be a live streamer and start it.
Yeah.
So you picked a great time to be here.
And Restream gave me a nice discount. Like, I was just poking around on the site and they were like, sign up now. And it actually ended up being cheaper than StreamYard. So Restream, you can throw that check in the mail too.
Here's my hint on Restream. They always do discounts on holidays. So look for a discount on Valentine's Day, and look for a discount on like President's Day, and look for like they're like one of those places that does a sale. But I've been happy with their product. I've only had one time where it didn't work, but that was like a whole AWS was down, so like half of it didn't work anyways.
Nothing you can do about that.
Yeah, but it's all been good, and it's cool to see you going to live stream. And I think you have a great show, great content for it, where people are going to want to interact. And we made it 8 minutes before we talked about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but
it's about to bring it back up. Well, it's funny what tips you in one direction or another, because I was talking with Brian and I knew he used StreamYard and I really liked the way that worked. And then talking to you and you're like Restream and going back and forth, and that it was really tough. And it really came down to the fact that the Epoch Cam worked with Restream but not with StreamYard. And I was like, all right, that's it. I don't have to buy an external camera. I just use my phone, even though it doesn't work yet, but it will. I was like, that's the decision. And what really I've been thinking about for a while, taking the show for a number of reasons, off of talking alternative broadcasting and doing it like this. I wanted no commercials. I wanted to be able to go long format. I wanted to save money. I felt I had built an audience. I'd done enough. They've been out of the studio itself since March 13th of 2020. And they officially announced the other day that they're letting it go. Like they're not going back. So I've been on Zoom and I've been working with the whoever was doing the production that day on the Zoom, and at a certain point I was like, all right, I can do this, like I'm paying for something that I can do right now. So those were all like kind of in my head, but I trained at Hansel Gracie Academy in Midtown pretty much every day. And the other thing I started to get, not sick and tired of or annoyed with, but it became unnecessary. It was doing it every Friday at noon,
yeah.
For 2.5 years, every Friday at noon, no matter what the hell was going on.
And you're super solid, consistent.
I do not break form.
Yeah.
I do not break form. And even on holidays when the studio is closed, I would just do it on Facebook Live myself at the restaurant, And this year I didn't. It was, New Year's Eve and Christmas Eve were both on a Friday, and we were super busy between the wine store, the restaurant, and everything. I was like, all right, I'm letting it go. And I was like, this fucking feels good. I was like, man, like my whole life kind of shifted. And I was like, wow. But I could never do the Friday noon class at Henzo's. And it didn't bother me for so long. And the guy that was teaching on Wednesdays, I'm not sure you're familiar with him. If you're not, you should be. His name is Mark Cerrone.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so he's teaching Wednesday at noon, and literally like 2 weeks ago we come in and he was like, all right guys, this is going to be my last Wednesday. I'm switching to Friday. Sapo's now going to be teaching on Wednesday, and I'm going to be teaching Friday at noon. And I was like, what? Like, I love his class, and that's the only class he teaches there. And like, I'm with Zuke half the time, and I was just like, no. And it was literally like right then I left the class and I was like,
you're like, this radio show is interfering with my life now.
I was like, that's it. We're done. We have to change things up. But I did feel this pressure after a while, and almost like contrived, like having to book, although the studio took care of a lot of things. They took care of a lot of marketing. They took care of all the production. I did all the post-production, and I had to find all the guests. And that was a lot of work. And after 2.5 years of like every week, I need this person. And I'm like, sometimes it was hard. And I would, I'd grab like a random person and just be like, you seem interesting. Let's talk. It almost like directionless. And like it always
works out.
It always worked out. And I've got a couple good guys that help me out with my micro content. And they always would like go and extract like, the cherry pick the highlights, and it was always cool. But I feel like it just a load off my chest, but also like this renewed passion for like really digging deeper and not sacrificing anything for what the show is actually going to be about. So that feels good. But yeah, it was just funny that Mark's class was the thing that made me like, and we got into a conversation about it, and I've been working with him for like, I don't know, maybe like 6 months only. It was like the first time I took his class was like 6 months ago. And I was like, oh, this is fascinating. And I was aware of him because of like social media and his presence online. And,
yeah, of course.
Right. Great instructor and one of Henzo's early students. And so it's like been a huge honor. But we started talking. He just opened a new school in Naples. So he's got Hansel Gracie Milford, Connecticut, like right outside of the city, just across, right outside of the Bronx. And then he just opened a new spot in Naples. And we got to talking about that. We were talking about business ownership and entrepreneurship and martial arts and the connections. I was like, well, I have this show. And he's like, no way, bro. I was like, would you come on? He's like, absolutely. And then he developed this app for his locations. Like he's tech driven too. And I was just like, oh my God, you were like the perfect storm, man. You're like jujitsu.
Oh, it sounds like I need him on my podcast too.
Man, yeah.
Which I need to get you on. I've been talking with my co-host, and it's leadership and technology driven. Yeah. But me and one of my other hosts, we both do jiu-jitsu, and that's how we both met. And we're like, we need to do this segment. Like jiu-jitsu has been this big portion of our life, that we take into business and leadership lessons, but just martial arts in general. Whether somebody doesn't do those, maybe they do karate or taekwondo or something. There's something about it, right? Where you get with this group of people, and you don't know half of what anybody does, right?
You really don't.
And you're thrown off, like in jiu-jitsu, you're thrown off because you wear a gi all the time, and you're thrown off when you see somebody out on the street in like clothes. You're like, maybe that's, oh no, that is.
You're like, why is that guy looking at me funny? And you're like, oh shit! Like you get close, and you smell him, and you're like, I know you.
And it's just one of those things. And so me being in DC at my school, we have a lot of military that pop through,
right?
Or retired military. And they're like, this is one of the things where when I retired from the military, I didn't know if I was going to get that feeling of camaraderie again. like being somewhere doing hard things with people and everybody just working together. And that's where like we need to do this whole segment just on, how this affects you professionally from an entrepreneurial standpoint and a leadership thing. Because you learn so much stuff, like teaching somebody how to do an armbar, basic thing, and you stop to think about it and you're like, wait, I've been doing this wrong. It's like, you have to think about it.
You do. You find those nuances. I mean, teaching was great for me. Before the pandemic, I was teaching at the school that I started at like 5 days a week, and it solidifies the knowledge that you already have. And if you're spitting some bullshit, it gets exposed real quick, and I'm like, oh, this is great. Interestingly enough, and I tagged you in it today, I'm not sure if you saw it, but I opened up Facebook this morning, and it was a year ago today that I was on your LinkedIn Live talking about jujitsu.
Oh, man.
I was like, oh,
that's cool, man. I forgot about that.
So like
we just talked about it, but that's crazy. That was a year ago.
It was exactly a year ago today. So I was like, I must be on the right path. Like,
there you go. And you got your little photo say clip, right? Where you're going like this, right?
These guys that I teach just gave me this for Christmas. I was like, oh, that's so cute.
So I'll give you one tip for live streaming. I told you not to worry about Twitch, right? Because you stream to it, but stream to it anyways. Because one of the cool features of Twitch is a thing called clips. So you can literally go into your video that you streamed to it and pull out 30-second clips, and it makes them for you, and you can download it.
Nice.
So you don't have to pull it down into like
Premiere and all the shit that I do,
or Filmora or whatever the 1,000 ones. You can just make the clip right there, however long you want. By default, they give you 30 seconds, but you can make it as long as you want, and then pull it down for social. And that's what I did with your clip. I just found the spot, and I'm like, okay, here, just make it this long, edit it, export, download. Throw a stinger on at the end. For anyone who doesn't know, stinger is just like a show name or something you want somebody to do, and put that on, and there we go. It took me like 15 minutes to find it. It's like, it's a great thing. So if you just streamed that, and I believe YouTube's working on some of the same features because they're kind of like in a heated battle for trying to pull the gaming community over there. So YouTube and Google in general is kind of working on some of those same features as well for that product. But the thing with Twitch too is if your audience is watching at the same time, they can make clips for you. So they could be like, 60-second, oh, that's a cool sound bit, 30-second, clip it. So like the thing on Twitch is people go, clip it, and they want somebody to hit the clip button. So you can have micro content.
Can you mark it is there a way to mark it in real time?
You can.
That was what somebody was asking me. It's actually one of Gary Vee's guys that I've befriended over the last couple of years. And he was like, do you have the ability? Because I guess they do that.
You 100% can. So you can actually do, once you get your base better, you can have like producers or mods on the Twitch side, and they can mark stuff for you too. They can go clip, 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 clip. And by default, if you just hit clip, it makes a 30-second clip. But when you go back and later, you can edit how long you want it to be, what you want it to be called, and just download it.
And this is indigenous in the software?
It's built in straight to the browser. You don't have to download anything.
And Twitch is free.
Twitch is free. So I always tell people, and I should have told you this because I wasn't thinking about it at the time. I'm like, well, don't worry about cultivating an audience on Twitch unless you're going to be on Twitch all the time, because discoverability is difficult there.
Yeah.
Just because if you don't get hundreds of viewers all the time, you get buried down in the categories.
Right.
So, but to stream there so that you can go back later or have somebody mark clips for you so that you can have micro content yourself later. And I believe like with the clips, if you publish them, you can connect YouTube and it will automatically push the clip to YouTube as well too when you do it.
That's pretty.
So,
so we were talking about content production, and I wanted to come back to that because it's a lot of work. Like you said, you've got to like somehow extract the video. So what my process was before, when we were in the studio, and this was kind of the hint to me that I needed to revert back to this. When we were in the studio physically before everything shut down, the show would stream to my personal Facebook page, not the station's Facebook page. And I got a lot more views and I got a lot more interaction. And it was very easy for me to download the video from there. When it went to the station's Facebook page, my God, I had to jump through hoops, and I was using these other third-party things to try to extract the video, and the quality was off sometimes. Sometimes it just wouldn't let me do it. It would take me like 3 days. And I'm like, shit, I'm trying to get this posted to YouTube and like be able to get micro content. It was kind of a hassle. And then once I would finally get it, then I would have to put it in Premiere Rush and go through, I cut out the commercials and then post it to YouTube on my routine was show Friday, YouTube video Monday. And I was very consistent about that again for 2.5 years. The only time it came unhinged was if I couldn't get the video freaking downloaded, and I would end up being like Tuesday instead of Monday. But and then the ability to extract out micro content as well. But it was a lot of work. I think you still haven't even distributed it to social. We're just talking about getting the person. If you want subtitles, that was another step. Then you gotta, what was I using? I can't remember the name of it. But anyways, it was just this video editor that I'm friends with that's helped me out. She recommended it, and it does a really good job of subtitling. You have to go back in and like, correct a word here or there. But when I first started, I was literally there was another website where you just put the video in and you had to type it in yourself. And then, like,
that's terrible.
Do the time markers, and a 30-second clip would take you like 45 minutes. I'm old school and analog, so I always like revert back to like, how did they make the wheel? Okay, if I ever need that, I can make a wheel, and then we move forward. But yeah, it can be a tremendous amount of work. And then if you want to drop logos and, like you said, do a stinger and all that stuff, it's just you're extracting audio, you're doing all these different things, and it was a lot of work. So that little bit right there is like, that's worth it for me alone. The other thing I have to do Twitch for, so I recently had a guest on who is he's a famous Japanese muralist, and also
he does art on Twitch.
What's that?
He does art live on Twitch.
No, so he started an NFT community called Oki's World, and Kent Yoshimura is the guy's name. He was on right before the holidays, and that's funny. Just came in the restaurant with a friend one night, and we got to talking. And so he also trained with the Japanese Olympic judo team, and he competed in Muay Thai in Thailand, like at like the most famous arena.
Legit.
Yeah, no, the dude is serious. But he also is a co-founder of Neurogum, which Joe Rogan is a huge fan of, and they sponsored Lex Friedman's podcast. And he started this NFT thing, and I was like, dude, you have to come on the show. So he came on, we had a great show, some great micro content out of it, and we connected on Twitter, which is where he's very active, especially with Oki's World. And we talked a lot about his NFT community, and you can mint through them. And I was like, this sounds like so much fun, and I'm like getting my kids involved. So they have this whole world where it's not just like, oh, I created this pixelated ape, and you can buy it and use it as your Twitter avatar. This is a whole world, and they're kind of like, they kind of look like aliens. Or every character has horns. That's like one of the things. I like that. I just like that idea. So, but you create characteristics for your Oki, and like characteristic traits. And we were talking about food and the restaurant and involving my kids. And he was like, yeah, you would be like this like cooking, fighting Oki, and like you can make up your own food. Like you make your own vegetables, so it doesn't have to be potatoes, and like you could like make up names for it and create this whole menu and shit. I was like, all right. And he was like, but you got to come on the Twitch. And I was like, shit. Like,
which is fun.
Like,
so like,
I've never
set up an account. Right? Do you have Amazon Prime?
Yes, of course.
Okay,
so I live in the Western Hemisphere.
Well, you never know. I know some people who refuse to do this with Amazon. Just
I live by that shit, man. That cord I need to get, that shit's going on Prime today. I'll have it here tomorrow.
Exactly, or within an hour sometimes.
Well, the great part, there's like, I'm surrounded by Apple stores. Sometimes if I order from Apple, I can choose like the downtown Brooklyn location. They'll fucking send it with a seamless driver, like a seamless bike guy. And I get it, literally, you can get it within 2 hours, and then they'll just drop it off at the wine store. Someone's already there, and I get a text like, your cord has arrived. I'm like, boop, there you go.
Yeah,
so if it's like a cord or something, if you want a phone on it.
It's crazy. But connect your Amazon Prime. So set up a Twitch account, right? Connect your Amazon Prime, because the whole thing is Twitch can be a bit like a Japanese game show when you land on there, especially if you're going to go on to like Kit Boga or Dr. Disrespect, one of the guys who was like huge because the chat just goes Like
Yeah.
it's the most insane thing. It's like in slow mode, but it's still faster than anything you've ever seen. So I always tell people, connect your Twitch and then look for small creators when you're on there, right? So there's people who do live art on there, people who play music. That might be a good avenue for you to do as well too, is do
What
some
about-
music on there.
What about cooking? What about like the
Cooking, there's
restaurant?
people who do cooking there too.
Yeah.
If you use the Twitch app, you can stream straight to
Right.
Twitch itself. Or the way I've gotten around it using Restream is I start the stream from my web browser, and then I join it with my phone as a guest. And then I put my phone on as the guest, so then I can control the stream from the computer, but using the phone like a guest and move it around and go out anywhere I need to go.
Well, it's very similar to the Epoch Cam, because the Epoch Cam, you can just move around with your phone, but the computer is the control device.
Correct. Yeah. So that's like, so instead of having to tether to the computer, you just use your phone and join as a guest, because with Restream or StreamYard, you can join as a guest, but you can't really run and start the show as the host from your phone, because obviously, like the phone's like this big on the screen and you can't see the buttons to start it.
Yeah.
But it's a side hack that I've done before. So.
And then similarly, I can just make micro content from that to use for the restaurant's social media.
Yep.
Motherfucker, we're about to get stealth here. I like this. I need all these things because I'm a busy dude and I don't have time.
I will tell you one of the things. So Travis Lochner, right? He and I,
T-Lock.
Yeah, T-Lock. We had a conversation at one point because I used to be a chef.
Right, I remember.
I had conversations with him. He's like, "Oh, I don't know how to cook like anything." I was like, "Dude, I need to teach you how to cook." And then he's like, "Well, if we're gonna do it, it needs to be a live stream."
Yeah.
He's like, to get me on it.
I love that dude, man. I'm
like, you know what? That show would actually work really well. You could do something similar, like maybe you want to show like your special of the week, how it's made or something,
right.
And go through it. I think you could get people to watch and just stream it to LinkedIn too. Like just stream to LinkedIn, see what happens, right?
straight from Twitch.
Yeah, you can stream to both. So you use Restream and then stream to both, right?
Right.
So, just stream to both.
Okay, the Pandora's box has been opened. That's great. That's really great. Oh my God, this has been so much better than I thought it was going to be. That's really cool. There was something else I was going to say. You triggered and I lost it. I feel like it was somehow. Oh, what I was going to say with this Okies World fellow is I just texted him the other day after I realized everything that I was doing, and it's mentioned earlier, I want to just make the content more interesting and have long format. We're actually gonna mint. I'm gonna mint one of his Okies live. We're gonna do it.
That'll be fun.
Right, and because I can I can screen share and do all those things, and just walk through the whole process with him, and I think that would be exciting.
I think that will do really well because for a lot of people, NFTs are like this weird, mysterious thing. And they're like, oh, people just pay for a picture that's a meme that I can download from ImageFlip. It's but that's not really the point of it. It's like,
right. I
I
still can't define why I want an NFT. I just know I want an NFT. I have none. I've done nothing so far. But after working with him and having it, he came on as a guest. I always like to, if there's a way I can reward somebody for taking the time out of
So Justin Kahn, who started Justin.tv, which eventually became Twitch, if anyone's not familiar with him, he's literally the guy. When I think of live streaming, I think of him when he was just live streaming himself 24 hours a day, and that's how Twitch.
Is that all he did? He just
he literally just put up this giant backpack on, and he would just walk around. He'd stream himself. This is probably 2005 or something like that. And then eventually they wind up turning it Twitch. But he started a new company as well too, and I can't remember what it's called, but where they do NFTs for communities or gamers. And it's this idea of minting things for active people in your community and giving them something special in return. So that's probably something to look out. And it sounds like the other one's working on something similar. So it's coming down the pipe. And I think a live stream on that, just explaining to people what it is and just showing what it is will shed a lot of light.
And demonstrating the process. Because a lot of people are I think most people are probably buying already minted NFTs. But when you understand and realize, that you can mint yourself, and you don't have to be just like, on an island alone. There are communities surrounding it, and you get to see the process of how that's done. I think that maybe will like lift the veil off of some eyes and make everybody a little bit more comfortable. I mean, I feel like with NFTs, like the art aspect of it was just like the springboard.
Yeah,
that was the way it kicked off, but it's just like the surface. It's just like the topsoil. That there's so many other applications, and the real reason I want to get into it is because I feel like it's going to be a major player in like business going forward and marketing and.
So what I think for me, from a technology perspective, I think the big deal with it is the digital ownership, right? Mm-hmm. So you're a musician. Can you imagine being able to prove from a digital perspective if somebody's using your music somewhere, right? You can prove that you own it, that they own you royalties for playing that music or your photos or your art. That's where the big thing is for me. It's like being able to prove from a digital perspective that you own this without having to physically produce something, right? You can just look up on the blockchain that Jeremiah Fox owns this music. And if it pops up on YouTube, YouTube knows that they have to pay you a royalty to play that song.
Right.
That's where the big game-changing thing of an NFT will come from, not necessarily the art itself,
You know what we had to do back in the day? If you
scour the internet.
No, I'm talking free internet. If you recorded something or wrote something, you had to say it was get it on a cassette or on a disc, or if it was written music, just print it out, and you had to mail it to yourself and never open it in case there was ever like a conflict. Yeah. You had like this postmark thing that was dated, like, nah, bro, this precedes like that was the poor man's version of a copyright back in the day, and then eventually you can trust yourself on like BMI or ASCAP. But I know it's going in that direction, especially for like ownership of art music and stuff like that. But right now, that hasn't fleshed out to my understanding, like, because you got all these.
No, it hasn't.
People are just like taking screenshots of NFTs and claiming ownership, and it takes time and they get vetted out. But there's definitely been some scams. And as far as I understand right now, you can't even because everything is so fresh and new, you can't even like sue somebody at the moment for using the likeness of your NFT, even if they somehow probably don't know how they profit really, but I guess if you sell it fraudulently, maybe then you could. I'm not sure, but just for usage, it's like you can't. There's nothing you can do yet, so they have to pan that out in the courts, to make it viable for the.
I think in the United States, all it will take is somebody to sue somebody for it and someone to get a judgment. Then there's a precedent, right? And then people go, okay, this is same thing happened with email being mm-hmm. a documented form of communication. It had to go through a lawsuit, some big corporation, and they produced those as documents saying, hey, this is here. And then sets precedence because, okay, email is a document, that is legal, binding, just like if you sent that letter to yourself in the mail.
Right.
We can use that. So I think all it will take is something like that, and it'll set the wheels off.
And probably something high profile,
Oh yeah, it's going to take somebody with a lot of money.
Yeah, like Logan Paul and his fake Pokemon cards. Did you see that?
Yeah, I kind of ignore everything Logan Paul.
It must be nice to have that much money. Although if Jake and Ngannou have a boxing match, I'd watch that.
Yeah, every time I see like who he's fighting, I'm like, until he fights somebody who's like an active like fighter and like don't box a professional MMA fighter who's been retired for 5 years.
I mean, I expected nothing much of the Askren fight. I thought Woodley would have. I didn't expect that to go down. I didn't think Woodley was going to be face down with duck feet. That was a little bit of a shocker, but. I also thought Gane was going to win on Saturday.
Yeah.
And Gane really, he stepped it up. That was impressive. That was really impressive. We were studying some of that stuff. So I'm not sure if I've mentioned it to you or if you've seen it from some of my posts, but I've since September started MMA training as well, adding to my portfolio and my weaponry. So I trained jiu-jitsu for a little over 6 years now, and Muay Thai and kickboxing for a little over 6 years, but like completely separately. you know, and like in small little bits, like, oh, let's put these two together. And it's like, okay. And I felt like I knew what I was doing. And you go into like a legit MMA class and you
You don't know
realize
what you're doing.
you know dog shit. It was like being a white belt again. It was like, I'm like, I've heard stories of what it was like learning, jiu-jitsu in Brazil, like in the 60s and 70s and the early days in like San Diego and like Horian's basement, or it's at his in Horian's garage. And it was just like, whoever survived, you just got your ass kicked. You walked in, it didn't matter who you were.
You're the uke, right?
Yeah, you just got ragdolled, and like the only people that got like promoted and continued were the people who just took the ass whooping and continued to come back. There was no like, oh, you want a flow roll? Okay, no, it's like it was everybody was out for blood, and if you survived, you got promoted and you learned some shit. You stayed with it. I feel like that's kind of like what these MMA classes are like. They're like, oh, you think you want to train? And like, fuck, man, I'm 45. Most of those guys are like in their mid 20s, and they're like, cute. We're gonna beat the gray out of your beard.
Yeah, mid 20s and trying to kill each other every time they spar.
Well, they're not. I mean, it's Henzo's, and there's a bunch of pros, and you can't come in there with ill intentions. Yeah, like you have to leave your ego at the door. It has to be technical, because jiu-jitsu, you can get a little hot, you can get a little intense, and like there's injuries, but it's not like catastrophic most of the time.
It's fairly safe, I would say. Even from general sport perspective, right? You have a better chance of tearing your knee like playing soccer than you do.
But like that's one of the most common things. If you're in a room like a no-gi room that's like known for leg locks, you could tear, you could get a tear in a knee from a heel hook. You could pop your ankle. I've had my ankle pop like 3 times from toe holds, shit like that. But still, it's just like you go to MMA, you're like, okay, like some shit could go bad here. And what really can't happen, like those guys cannot suffer major setbacks because they've all got fights coming up. Definitely cannot knock one of them out accidentally. You know what I'm saying? Like that would be detrimental to their fucking career. But if you we were doing spinning back kicks yesterday, and if you accidentally kick one of those guys in the rib with your heel and break their rib before their fight, they're fucked. So you fuck them then, but like a knockout, that could be like potentially career ending. So you have to be smart. You have to monitor your intensity, but at the same time, they're like, I mean, it's just so crazy to work with somebody who's like prepared to get knocked out. Where in jiu-jitsu, it's like, yeah, they might not tap to a choke, but they just go to sleep and it's fine. You wake them back up. I mean, I've gone to sleep before. It's like, it's actually a nice experience, and they can tap, a lot of guys, they'll let their arm get hyperextended or their ankle pop a little bit, but like they walk out of the gym on their own 2 feet. You know what I'm saying? Like to work with guys who are like prepared to get their fucking head knocked off, it's just like next level. And the lengths that they go to protect themselves and keep themselves out of danger is eye-opening, So it's been whatever. Like I said, I started in September. I'd say like 2 weeks ago, things started to finally click. And I was able, the funny part is your lack of confidence, and the same is true of live streaming and taking on too much. If I were to like on this first show decide, look, we're going to do some screen sharing and all this, I'd be a fucking mess right now. I'm keeping it simple. And I'm not expressing all of my attributes today, just my glowing personality. The same is true in that setting where like I wasn't able to execute on some of the things that I know how to do really well, at first because of my lack of confidence, because I was like overwhelmed by the information coming at me. Now I feel a little more confident. I was laughing about it with the instructor yesterday because I'd be on the train, like holding my bag, I got like shin guards and big gloves and little gloves and like a scared little kid, like I'm going into why am I doing this? I'm waiting for the phone to ring to be like, hey, you got to come back. There's a fire or something, like anything to like get me out of this class. But it's precisely that fear that forced me to go and do it. And I finally don't feel that way. And I'm finally starting to do like, I trained, head high round kicks for years. Like I can do them like pretty well. And I wasn't doing them because of fear. And now I'm like moving more like myself and it feels really good. But man, it has been eye-opening in terms of the context of jiu-jitsu, like understanding like why you bridge. You want to know how to learn how to get a really good bridge? let somebody start wailing on your face from a mount. You will fucking bridge. Like guys are kind of lazy with the bridge. They
Then you find out half guard's not that great of a position.
I mean, if you're on top, it's nice, but not on the bottom.
That's what I'm saying. If you're on bottom, that's not a guard you want to play.
All of it. Like bottom of closed guard is terrible. Bottom of closed guard is not terrible, but you don't want to stay there. You have, the goal is always to get back to your feet.
You got to transition. You got to move.
Yeah. And in jiu-jitsu, you can be like, I'm just going to hang out here, play with some arm bars. You can't punch me. Yeah, that shit goes out the window real fast. So like heightened awareness. But I appreciate that. I mean, I always, I'm a restaurant owner, shit's scrappy. And I like to know like what are the best, best techniques for like worst possible scenarios. So it's been fun. Highly recommended if you've never tried it. And if you ever want to know how you're going to look in a real fight, that's a good way. That's a good way to low consequence way to test it out. Go into an MMA class, get punched in the face a couple times with big gloves. You'll know how you'll do in a real fight. I feel like you go into a jiu-jitsu class and you're like, oh yeah, for self-defense, we want to grab the collar and grab the sleeve, and it's like, what if he's wearing a t-shirt? What if he's not wearing a shirt? Like all that kind of goes out the window. So it's a much more like applicable approach to self-defense too, which is good.
Yeah, I'd say that and wrestling too, right? If you can like straight wrestle, you're fine 90% of the most situations.
Yeah, and I suck at wrestling too, and never did it, and now I'm forced to between Mark's classes, because Mark does it. He's a big stand-up guy, and he's also one of George St. Pierre's like closest friends, which is really dope. And he's just always like, my good buddy George, and I'm like, he's like, George is my favorite fighter of all time. Like I love.
This is mine too. Such a humble guy, man. Like,
humble guy, but like has done it. He really
athlete, just
right, and doesn't talk a lot of shit. I feel like he's a real martial artist. He's like,
he just shows. He's like, I don't need to say anything. I'm just going to show you.
So, it's all just kind of fascinating. But between Mark's class and MMA, I'm getting a healthy dose of like learning, to improve on my stand-up and my takedowns and clinch work and everything like that. So
I've been working on it a ton. My instructor got his judo black belt Kodokan in Japan. Nice. Wrestled in college, and was on Lloyd Irvin's team, back when Keenan Cornelius was there.
Oh, wow.
And Briggs and all those people. So it's so funny. You do stand up with him and you try to, do a Sotogari or something, and he's like not even breaking a sweat.
Right. And you end up on the
puffing, and he's just like.
And you end up on the ground.
And I end up on the ground. But like you said, having that stand up and the ability to wrestle or at least do some type of judo is super helpful. I mean, a lot of times jiu-jitsu schools, like even when I travel, people get stuck in like, okay, they start from the knees, and it's like, oh, no, I want to start standing. Like this is like, when are we ever going to do this knee thing? It's like.
I saw this meme the other day, and it was like, it's one of the famous GIFs and memes of the guys like blinking his eyes, like, whoa, and it's a picture of him like in the clouds looking down, and it's like God saying, I give you one of the best martial arts, in existence, and you start from the knees. Like this is what you chose to do with it. It's pretty funny. All right, my battery's getting low here. We're gonna.
Mine is too. I'm looking at.
I forgot. I was like, all right, I need to plug it in. And my cord's over there. I do want to mention this Saturday at Gregor Gracie's new academy in Brooklyn, and I interviewed him and his business partner. It was super fun. Travis Stevens is doing a seminar.
Oh, that should be fun.
Yeah, and I'm going, and I'm like, oh shit. I only put the gi on like once a month right now because I'm really hyper focused.
You got to do it for Travis Stevens, man.
I was like, my wife was like, you're gonna wear. Yeah. My wife's like, you're gonna wear a gi, and I was like, yeah, I know, it's crazy. But,
and you're gonna feel like you're in a washing machine when he throws you.
I hope he doesn't throw me. I just want to learn. From him. But I love his interview with Lex. That's a great podcast. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that.
Awesome, cool, man.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, man. I feel good. I'm ready. Like, what did Stephen Pope say? Don't get crazy now. I'm gonna get crazy, man.
Yeah, just go crazy. It's fun. I'm
going to.
It's fine.
Well, again, man, thank you for all your help and advice.
You appreciate it, man.
Thanks for taking the time out to come on. It's really cool, brother. All right. Until next time, everybody.
All right.
Peace.